Hey everyone, Tim NesSmith, Ship Superintendent with the USS KIDD Veterans Museum, here with you in Drydock number 6 in Thoma-Sea Shipyard with the USS KIDD. So, we had a hull video that we put out last year, or maybe earlier this year, I've lost track of time, but I talked about what we've done to the hull to repair it. Touch points, replacement of plates, cropping and renewing. If you haven't seen that, we'll tag that video into this section of this current video so you can go see that. But we just got word that our fundraising efforts have been successful. We've got the funding that we were looking for. That doesn't mean we're not still looking for more funding, because there's always more stuff to do. But we've got the money now to be able to go ahead and start a new contract with Thoma-Sea to do some finishing work on the ship so that she is 100% the best that she can be. Everything that can be done on the ship that can't be done in Baton Rouge will now be done here at Thoma-Sea in Houma before she sets sail for Baton Rouge. So we figured we'd give you a little rundown, a little brief on that, all the things we're going to be doing between July or June and through November, and let you take a look. So, follow me. All right, so right off the bat, since we're on the dry dock floor, I'm going to talk to you about two of the items that's going to be happening in the next few months. One of them is the sea chest. A lot of people have asked about this in the comment section. A lot of people watched USS New Jersey in the shipyard, and they were testing these sea chests to make sure that they were still watertight. What a sea chest is an opening through the hull to pumps, to the condenser for the engines, that sort of equipment, where water either is scooped up into the ship by those pumps or into the condenser, or it's an ejection point where the pumps are pumping the bilges out through the hull into the ocean and getting the water out of the bilges. So a sea chest is underneath this, and this is just a cover that the Navy put over this in 1964, so they didn't have stuff going up into the piping and everything inside the ship. In case there's a leak somewhere, then water's freely flowing in. They seal these up when they decommission a ship. So what Thoma-Sea is going to do for us is they're going to shave off these covers and remove them, and then they'll go inside. This will actually be an entry point for them to go inside. They're going to remove some of the piping that is connecting to the hull here, so that when they plate over the opening and weld it up, make sure it's tight, and then grind it smooth, now we won't have any sort of friction for things to catch on. The water will flow smoothly past the hull instead of hitting it, turning, and gradually wearing the metal, and also having, like I said, stuff hang on it. But by removing the piping inside by a few inches, few feet, when we are inside the ship, we will be able to look at this plate that will replace the cover, and we'll be able to see if there's any deterioration. Whereas if we left the pipe connected, there's always the possibility that the plate could wear thin, and we would never see water intruding until it gets to a point somewhere in the ship, in the piping, and finds an exit point, which means we could have a leak 100 feet away and not even in the same compartment. So by shaving those pipes, we now have clear access to the hull. We can take care of the interior of the hull, and we don't have to worry about any rotting through in the future. And I say we, I mean we as the KIDD Museum, not we as in Tim, because by the time that rots through, hopefully I'm retired and maybe even in the grave. So that's one of the things we'll be doing with the sea chest. Now, the other thing is right up this way, if you'll follow me. You see our rivet lines. You can see where you've got the rivets, and you can see where there's lap plates, where plates are lapping over each other, one above the other, and then you come up, and this line laps over this. They are going to take from stem to stern, stem to stern, got my directions mixed up. They're going to take and weld each individual rivet and each individual plate line and make sure that, because KIDD hadn't moved for 42 years other than going straight up and straight down, she had not gone in the ocean to where the whole ship is flexing and moving since 1982. They're going to make sure that nothing has worked loose. And this is something Battleship Texas was doing. They were re-welding their rivets wherever they went before they went back in the water. And this is just a good idea. We don't want anything loose because water will find a way in. So they're going to weld every single rivet that remains on the hull and every seam where plates overlap and make sure that she is 100% watertight. Okay, so one more thing that we're going to do, probably a small thing compared to everything else we're doing, but if you look up, you can see we've got 3 portals through the hull there. One for sewage, one for freshwater intake, and one for electrical. The electrical is still in use at the moment as we're drawing power from the dry dock to keep the ship lit up. And what we've got to do is make it easier to connect and disconnect. When we disconnected and removed the ship from the cradle in April of 2024, we had to de-energize the electrical line so nobody's electrocuted, and we had to chop the cable to get it off. Well, what we're going to have to do now is have a plug-and-play system. Thoma-Sea is going to make a male-female socket, and we simply disengage the electrical flow and pop it loose, just like unplugging your TV or your microwave at home and plugging it back in. It'll be a plug-and-play system. Maybe 2, 3 generations of ship keepers from now, if they have to take the ship out for any reason, whether it's going to dry dock, maybe, just maybe, wouldn't it be cool if all 3 kids could get together, the 661, the 993, and the 100? That would be neat. Hey, let's go down to the Gulf and meet up. Let's go to New Orleans and meet up. That would be cool. But whatever the case for her having to come out of the cradle, they just simply have to de-energize and unplug instead of cutting and then having to splice back together when they come home. So thinking forward a little bit. Okay, so another item on the new contract will be repairs of deck houses. Now, if you've been paying attention to the project since we started getting ready, we painted the starboard side of the ship, the hull, from the waterline to the main deck in May of 2023. As soon as that project wrapped up, our team B&B, Nathan Bergeron and Oren Bordelon, started going around the deck houses where the steel on the deck house meets the steel on the hull meets the aluminum on the deck house, and they started repairing where dissimilar metals had compromised it and caused deterioration and wasted metal, holes in the metal, in the bulkheads. They started repairing those in the anticipation that we're going to go to the shipyard next year, and they're going to blast, and we're going to have all that crud blowing into the deck houses where the exhibits are and everything. So, excuse me. So they started doing they started doing repair work on the wasted metal all around the ship. Well, they did a great job. We thought we were good. You get the ship here to the dry dock, they start water blasting, and guess what? Just like with the hull, there's stuff that you don't know about. Stuff that's under the paint that looks fine, the paint's not compromised, but that metal has thinned out, and as soon as something with a lot of pressure hit it, boom, it went away. So Thoma-Sea is going to come through, and they're going to make the same sort of deck repairs that we were making leading up to this. Not deck repairs, I apologize, bulkhead repairs. Wasted metal repairs that we were making. And I'll show you a few examples of those. One is right here on the aft deck house, right underneath Mount 53. Take a look. Now, some of you out there are going to say, well, y'all weren't taking care of the ship very well. But again, none of this was visible until they hit it with high pressure water. Got some right here, a little small spot. Right back in here. Now, we knew about this one, we just didn't get a chance to get to it before we sailed from Baton Rouge. So we knew about this one, and it was on our list to get to, but we ran out of time. Now, this one I would theorize is a little bit of dissimilar metals, aluminum meeting the steel rim coming up that the deck house attaches to, coming off of the deck, off the hull. But I would wager that it isn't just electron theft here. It's a combination of electron theft and water pooling in this corner back here, inside the deck house, because we're right underneath an expansion joint. And that's the next project that we're going to talk about. So we were talking about expansion joints a moment ago, and I'm going to show you those in just a second. But for those who aren't familiar with ships, let me describe what they do. An expansion joint is basically a seam, and imagine the ship going through the water, it's going over waves, going into the troughs, meeting the next wave. So the hull is flexing just a little bit. And when it flexes, that means if you're imagining a stick and you're bending a stick down, and the center is the high point, the top of that stick on that high point is the point that's catching the most pressure, the most stress, and that's where the break will begin to happen. So what the naval engineers and architects designed is flexible points on the deck house, because the deck house is going to be the highest point that flexes, flexible points on the deck house that can just move out just an inch, quarter of an inch, whatever it needs at that point in time, and then come back together. And the material holding it together to keep it watertight is thin and flexible and can be replaced over time. So that's an expansion joint. They go down on either side, either bulkhead of the deck house, and then they go across the top of the deck house. So it makes a U, basically. And we're going to be right above, right now, where we were just showing you, where the deterioration of the bulkhead had rotted through because of dissimilar metals, and I said it's also probably at that location because of pooling water. This is your expansion joint above that compartment. You can see it runs all the way across the deck house. And when we filmed Greyhound on board, the director and the producers wanted the ship to have a wet look to it because it's out in the North Atlantic. It ships a lot of water. They wanted it to look realistic and wet and just nasty all the time. And so in between takes, they've got water hoses and they're spraying water all over the top of the ship to keep it wet. And we actually had to ask them to stop spraying this section right here between the smokestacks where the 40mm guns are, the quads, and to tell them to stop because the water is flowing down the deck, it's flowing aft, it's hitting this joint, and the joint is the thin flexible metal is deteriorated, and so there's holes in it, and water was running down like Niagara Falls into our supply office, into sick bay, into emergency radio, and it was damaging stuff. So we needed to stop, and they were very gracious. They understood. They called a halt to it, and so they kept the areas wet elsewhere and didn't worry about it, which ultimately the cinematographer was like, y'all can just stop shooting water because it's not making a difference. So if you take a look here, Alcy will get in close for some B-roll to go over my voice here because of shadows and everything, but you'll see deteriorated points where it's rotted through, and that's one of the other projects Thoma-Sea is going to take care of for us. They're going to fix all 3 expansion joints for us. All right, so we were talking about the air compressor, ship's low pressure air compressor down below in the aft engine room. We're directly above that right now. And since that unit is beginning to fail after 82 years, it's a 1941 air compressor, then actually more than 82, but I'm a history teacher, not a math teacher, so I'm rolling with 82 years. Since that's reaching the end of its life, not providing enough pressure for the work that we need it for on the ship, we're going to replace it. It's not going anywhere. It's going to stay there because even the guys at Ingersoll Rand, when they saw it, they had never seen one like it before. They've seen air compressors that old, but that particular design apparently was a rarity to them. So we don't want to give up that sort of jewel. It's going to stay where it is. Instead, this ammunition handling room, we're going to take this little alcove right here, which would have been a rack of ammunition. We disassembled the rack. All this stuff is going to move out of it. Again, we were getting ready for dry dock and leaving the cradle, and so this was a storeroom for a little bit. This will all be cleared out, and we'll have a brand new Ingersoll Rand stuck in right here in this little alcove. Plenty of room to maintenance it by. It's not going to be pressed into a corner where you can't access part of it, which was the problem we had with the original sewage pump. And we will access through this fan motor area right here and bring the tubing, the air line, from the compressor into here and down through the ductwork into the aft engine room, and then channel it over to the original tank, which is still good, and then into the existing distribution system, the airline system throughout the ship. So very simple modification. It won't be like it was in 1945, but it keeps a World War II era air compressor available for us to do tours of when we do propulsion tours, because that's the area where it's located, and also allows us to take care of the ship in the here and now. So yes, not 1945, but it does allow us to keep the ship up, and it's an acceptable modification. We're losing one ammo rack and access to this room, but this room is a duplicate of 4 others, a total of 5 ammunition rooms on the ship, 3 of which are accessible to the public already. So an acceptable compromise. One of the things I wanted to check out was a little thing that the shipyard was going to be doing, and that was the bottoms of the supports that you see coming down, the frames for this deck house that Mount 45 sits atop of, were beginning to rot out down on the bottom. And so Thoma-Sea has come in, cut out the rotted metal, and welded in new feet for the frames where they connect with the deck. And this was because when KIDD first got to Baton Rouge, there was a fair bit of water leakage from overhead and coming down these frames and gradually rotting them out while she was sitting in Philadelphia. And so many of the frames over on the starboard side are intact. Along the aft bulkhead, they're intact, but over here on port, for whatever reason, more water intrusion was happening and they were rotting out. And so they have come in as requested, and they have replaced it with new metal. So
yeah, and you had the weight of that dual 40 millimeter up on top.
Right. So we did not want a 40 millimeter to come crashing down into this deck space and the one beneath it. So they have shored that up for us, and it looks good. Thank you, Thoma-Sea. So another small project that we are doing with this additional funding is replacing some of the ladders in the tanks that allow us to get into these lower spaces. They've deteriorated over time. There's about 5 of them out of how many, dozens that we have aboard ship. But there's a few of them that have deteriorated, and this will allow us better access in the future to get down in there and do inspections, structural surveys like we've done here in the yard. Folks coming in behind me and everybody else here. It seems like a small thing, but it's a very important thing because it does allow access for the future, for allowing us to get into hard to reach spaces and do inspections so that we know what's going on down in those areas. So thank you to Thoma-Sea for fabricating these ladders, and this should be done fairly quickly. So another one of the major projects that they're going to do under this new contract, we're here in the reefer deck, outside of the actual reefer over here in the pump room. Because of all of the humidity and the temperature changes back and forth, up and down, over the decades of her existence, the decking is rotting out. I mean, it's thin to begin with, but it's gotten thin enough to where it rots out. We've got it all through this small, narrow space, all the way from port side, all the way to starboard side, particularly underneath the actual refrigerant pumps. And you can see where the wasted metal is where the bulkhead meets the decking. No danger of the pumps falling through because of the girders underneath, the skeleton of the ship that's sitting underneath this, but the fact that the decking is rotting out around those girders is bad because underneath us is the reefer void, and that's one of the spaces that we actually had leaks in when we were coming to Thoma-Sea. And that compromises the compartmentalization of the ship. Instead of water being contained down there in the event of a serious leak, which this one was a seeping leak, if it had been a serious leak, the water would have just flowed right up on into this space, and potentially, depending on how much we had compromised elsewhere in the ship, it could have continued going on up to the level above us. So taking care of this, they're going to remove all the refrigerant pumps, all the equipment in here. It'll go right out the side of the ship, and that's how they repaired the ship back then. When the kamikaze hit, they peeled open one side of the hull and just pulled all those ruptured boilers and steam lines and everything out, rebuilt the plant in there, shoved the new boilers in, sealed it up, connected everything, and off she went. So that's the sort of the same scenario here that they're going to be doing. They'll pull all these pumps, tanks, everything out. They will cut the decking out. They'll put new decking across the girders, the steel skeleton, and then bring everything back in and reattach it. And we've already seen how they did such a great job with the reefers earlier, pulling the panels off and putting them back in. You wouldn't even know that they'd been pulled out. So this is another major part of it. An extension of that is taking care of any deterioration in the reefer void below us and the decking underneath the reefers. They're going to pull the reefers out, redo the decking, and then put them back in. And since the reefers are no longer functional, we won't have to worry about this again. The folks that come after us won't have to worry about this again because it's not collecting humidity. We keep humidifiers down here running when the water is up, because you do have a temperature change between this level and the level above us, even though there's no refrigeration going on anymore. Just the cold water coming down the Mississippi River from up north in the springtime, and air circulating in from South Louisiana, 70 degrees, 80 degrees in April, and yet it's still 45 to 50 degree water, and you get a lot of condensation just coming down the outer hull, and the dehumidifiers take care of that. So once we get this fixed, the next few generations, hopefully even further than that, will not have to worry about this in terms of our successors. So this is just part of what we're doing in this new contract, in this second wave of shipyard work. We had to take part of it off the table when we blasted the hull and found a little bit more that needed to be done that we didn't know about. It's common for shipyard periods. When you blast, you find more than what you knew. So now that our fundraising effort has been successful, we're putting it back on the table. We're getting it done, as you can see. That doesn't mean that we're not still fundraising. We need to make sure the lights are on at home. We need to make sure there's a place for KIDD to go back home to. So don't stop your efforts. We appreciate your efforts. Continue to hit that like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. Every video you watch is money coming to the museum. And go to USSKIDD.com and hit the donate button and share all this stuff. All of our social media you'll find down in the video description. Share it with others that you think would be interested in supporting and watching. We love it. We love the fact that you love this ship. This is your ship. And tune back in for part 2, because we're going to go down deep and we're going to show you some of the structural repairs that are being done. We'll see you next time. Fundraising, take 3.